Town of North Reading for the period of July 1st, 2006 through June 30th, 2009, which incorporates the Memorandum of Agreement signed 3/24/2008.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Vino. Discussion? Mr. O'Leary.
I don't think it's necessary. The memorandum of agreement, understanding that was signed in April, is already incorporated as part of the language of the collective bargaining agreement, and I have some reservations in memorializing it any further than we already have, for reasons which we've already discussed in executive session.
But it was my understanding that by putting a cover letter on it, that you might agree to it.
Yeah, I thought about it. I thought about it.
Any other comments? Yes.
I will be abstaining due to the fact that I wasn't on the Board of Selectmen when this agreement was entered into. However, if I had participated, I would not be voting in favor of signing this agreement this evening for the same reasons Mr. O'Leary has stated. I think it may compromise our position in certain other areas, as were discussed in the executive session last meeting.
Mr. Vino.
I will be in favor of signing it because I don't see the problem. Although it was discussed in executive session, I see nothing wrong with doing exactly what this motion says. So I am definitely in favor of signing it.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't want anything to be misconstrued in relation to the memorandum of agreement and understanding that was agreed to last April, which I did sign. So my position hasn't changed in relation to agreeing to that memorandum of understanding at that particular time, which is fully enforceable and is part of the contract with the local 25 Teamsters, which represent the North Reading police officers. But again, there are other issues that I feel come into play.
Okay. Mr. Vino.
If I may, Mr. Chair. I think us not signing this is going to put Mr. Balluconis in a very uncomfortable position where he's going to be going into bargaining in just a few months with these with this union, and you know, and just what we heard tonight. You know, the FAC, and I'm sure many residents are going to agree with the FAC that, you know, benefits have to be cut, and for something as trivial as this, to say, no, we're not going to sign your contract because you have a memorandum of agreement, and then we're going to ask you to give up benefits. It's beyond me to even just discuss this. It should be signed.
My point of view is it's not trivial. There's certain things we discussed in the executive session that I don't think it's appropriate to discuss at this present time. I think that signing this document this evening may compromise certain positions this board may want to take in the future.
And it doesn't change the terms and conditions of the agreement or any of the benefits under the agreement, whether we sign it or don't sign it.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
You abstain.
Two abstains.
Two abstentions. That means it passes.
Majority of those present and voting.
2-1, 2 abstentions. October town meeting. Mr. Balluconis.
The only item, Mr. Chairman, that the board hasn't provided a recommendation on is item number 11. And we had asked for a breakdown of expenses this evening, which was in your packet.
see it.
Any other issues that I have pertaining to the annual town meeting, will you please get a motion? Those will be reviewed by council. I will copy those to the board and for their package at the end of the week, and we'll be ready to go. This is the one remaining item tonight.
When I looked at the sheet this evening, and I did have pieces of this information from a couple of weeks ago, what I find surprising here is how much money was paid out by the town for details. Not a criticism, I'm just surprised that the number was as high as it is.
You mean the second listing?
Yes.
And then those would be primarily for DPW,
Exactly.
I would-
Public works projects, or any special events.
for special events, right, special events and,
Can we get a breakdown between special events and public works?
As finance department, we do an analysis.
Yeah, I think that might be important.
get a better understanding.
Right.
The interesting thing, Mr. Chairman, and again, I take fiscal years 4, 5, and 6 as being extraordinary, and that was our Route 62 big dig project, and into fiscal year '07 a little bit. So those numbers are somewhat high in relation to the details paid there, those 3 or 4 years. But for the other 3 years, the town details paid by the town represent about 20% of the budget.
The other thing to note is that the revenue realized by the town, which is supposed to be 10% of non-town paid,
In non-state.
in
non-state.
is far below.
Right, that was running, I did a little analysis there, for fiscal year '08, it was 4.8% of, what I did is I took the.
You had to subtract the 79.
I took the 79 out of the 384, which gave us 304, took the 14.6, and it was 4.8%. Fiscal
Well,
year
when you get
'07, it was
into
2.7,
when you got into the big years, '05 and '06,
2.8, 2.4, 2.3.
the percentage was much less.
1.5.
And that's because the state is exempt. Are any of the utilities exempt?
My understanding is that.
Verizon, except, I don't think Verizon, and I don't know about Reading,
Reading Light is exempt, yes.
Can we get a list of the, those utilities that are exempt?
Mr. Chairman, I mean, one of the arguments, as far as retaining the current practice and not even considering this is the revenue that the town would lose. And again, in the last fiscal year, it was $14,600. Fiscal year '07, it was $12,600. Again, the other years were a little bit higher, but that was because of the Route 62 project, where they had utilities on Route 62, and so they had to pay the detail rates. But, so it's running $12,000–14,000 a year as far as potential lost revenue, assuming, and again, depending upon how if this flagman thing ever comes to fruition, if the town's going to get out of the business altogether, then that's your exposure. If the town's going to stay in the business a little bit and coordinate the details and collect a fee, then that'll be reduced by a third, or thereabouts. So the revenue loss issue is pretty minor
Well,
in the scheme of things.
I need to know the breakdown of the details paid by the town in those two categories. And then I think we'll have enough information, we'll have some form of presentation just before, at our meeting, just before a town meeting, and make a decision on what to do with that article.
If I may, Mr. Chair? I just want to comment on Mr. O'Leary's comment that it's a very minor issue. I feel exactly the opposite, because in the last 6 years, this totals over $91,000 brought into the town on details. So that to me is not minor. I do understand the 62 issue, and something like that could come up again. And why should we lose out $20,000 a year if that's going to, we don't know what's going to happen. You know, as we've heard earlier tonight, I mean, we're scrimping and saving for pennies in this town, which we have to do. $14,000 is a lot of money when you're in the situation that we're in. So I would just respectfully disagree with Mr. O'Leary's comment that this is a minor thing on the details.
So between FY '03 to FY '08, we spent $550,000 in details for the town. I'm being a little unfair here because I don't know the breakdown of, you know, what those details were. But when we have that information, it tells another story too.
Right, but so that's not a fair statement to make at this point, because if those were department overtime, it has to be time and a half. You have no choice.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that.
okay, well,
The
that's,
question
okay.
is,
Could you use flag?
could I have used flagmen?
To work a
Instead of
shift? No.
What?
These are details.
No,
No,
these are
no,
details.
these are details.
all
These are
details.
All
details. This is
details.
above and beyond the normal shift. This
These
isn't overtime.
details paid by the town.
This isn't overtime for shift work. This is overtime, time and a half.
And to be
For detail
fair,
work.
I wanted a breakdown of what was
What was-
details for road work versus
Special
a
events.
detail for a special event which required police officers to be on site, Joe.
I do agree with that, and if you could, I'd like to see it go further as to where the detail was. I think we're all in agreement that on 28, you would have detail officers because of the traffic flow, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you know, if we're gonna get that breakdown, and I would be interested to see that too. Let's,
Mead Road and
let's-
Ivy Street, you're not gonna have
well, let's break it down.
2 weeks.
That's
Sorry,
a-
that's on a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's requiring.
that's gonna be a little
Yep.
bit difficult to do.
So I don't wanna use that comparison that the town spent
No, I'm just saying.
$500,000 because we don't have the information on it.
Forget it, but it's
Yeah.
just for Monday night.
No, I understand
It's
it.
That's not what I asked
$550,000. If it could save 10%, that's 50,000, you know, over the same time period, so the net loss, Joe, would be about $40,000.
No, I respectfully disagree with you.
All right, we're not gonna settle it.
No, I know.
Okay. Okay, what else?
Just my report.
Yes, please.
The boring part of the agenda.
Boring?
I'd like to do is, just refer to the yellow sheet that was in your packet, which is my report this evening. I will ask for an executive session at the end of the meeting for collective bargaining and litigation strategy. Number one is we received a letter from the chief of police.
Yes, we did.
It was concerning acknowledgement of the efforts of some of the members of the North Reading Police Department for a house fire that took place last month at 3 Westwood Circle. And then acknowledging the efforts of Detectives Michael McCollum and Thomas Encarnacio, patrol officers Bruce Herter and James McCormick, and Lieutenant Kevin Brennan for a job well done. They were recognized by the police and fire chief, and I did want to acknowledge those individuals publicly for their efforts associated with that fire and assistance that they rendered to the members of the department.
And, on behalf of the board, we recognize their efforts too.
Board members, I've provided you with a breakdown of the fiscal year 2009 community policing grant. The total amount available to North Reading is $49,875. The details included, you'll see that a majority of the grant is dedicated to support ongoing department training initiatives and also covering some overtime expenses. And you'll see the detail. If you look at the first sheet, we're not buying bicycles, that's just merely an example. We'll turn it over to the
We
back.
just bought bicycles with motors,
We're
didn't
not
we?
buying- we're not buying bicycles.
They got motors on them
Get
too.
a price on these, though.
It's an attractive price. You'll see the cost broken down by training, overtime, supplies and operating expenses, equipment, and other